Okay, folks, it's a common complaint among conservatives that conservatives like to say, I don't understand how it is that we can not attract black voters. I mean, America has all these great things about it that we conservatives celebrate, and we don't know how to make this appealing to black voters so that they'll come and they'll vote for us. And I have to say, one of the major impediments to conservatives that stands in the way of their getting more black voters on their sides is their basic scorn for any attempt of black voters, of prospective black voters, to actually appreciate the things of America. For example, you remember a few years back, Hamilton debuted, and there were people who actually were upset about the fact that here were people of minority descent, not white people, playing the white founders. And I'm looking at that and thinking to myself, oh my God, you actually have black people and Hispanic people and people of other racial descents wanting to put themselves in the shoes of the founding fathers of this country and portray them as opposed to other people of that era, as opposed to scorning the founding fathers for being white men predominantly. And I'm just like, how do you complain about this? This is not something you complain about. This is something that you celebrate. This is something that you love. This is something where you say, oh my God, I love it so much that you want to place yourself into American history, the American history that we, as the progeny of Americans who, yes, once were free or once were slaves, we all are descended from. We are the posterity that is mentioned in the preamble to the Constitution, where it talks about we the people of the United States in order to form a more perfect union, yada, 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 and to preserve for ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty. That's us. That's us. Whether you're free or whether your ancestors were free or slave, that refers to you if you are a U.S. citizen. If you are an immigrant and you came to this country and you naturalized to become a citizen, that pertains to you. And so if you, as somebody from outside the United States or who were descended from people other than the founding fathers of the United States, if you want to actually put yourself into the roles, into the steps of the founding fathers, well, hell, I salute you for that. Come on aboard and join and look at the conservatives who appreciate the works of those founding fathers and want to see those works maintained down through the centuries. But conservatives love to shoot themselves in the foot by complaining about things like this, saying, well, hey, wait a minute, cultural appropriation much, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. Now is not the time. Now is not the time to point out any little hypocrisies here. I mean, yeah, you might see that, some black people might get upset if some white girls decide to braid their hair. Okay, big whoop-de-doo. What is much more important than that is black people feeling comfortable with including themselves within the American story. Part of the things that make that happen is adding new holidays to the calendar like Juneteenth. Now you have the end of slavery, or the announcement in Texas of the end of slavery as part of our calendar of holidays. That's a great thing. That makes more black people feel included in our national story, and that's something that we need to continue and celebrate and try and do more of. And one of the things we have to do is not discourage people who are actually actively trying to do this themselves without any prompting from us. Who thought that the Library of Congress, which is now run for the first time by an African American woman, would say, hey, you know what would be really interesting is if we took one of the most celebrated female black performers of our time, who also happens to be a classically trained flautist, meaning a person who knows how to play the flute really damn well, and let her play the crystal flute once owned by James Madison and donated to the Library of Congress that he created. And so that is exactly what has happened. The head of the Library of Congress contacted Lizzo, who you might know as being a rather large artist, not just in terms of popularity, but also in terms of size and weight and twerking that sets off earthquake monitors. You've got this superstar who is also interested in American history to the point that she actually played a couple of notes on this crystal flute, while doing a little bit of her, standard present day, non-17th century twerking at the same time. But still, playing the crystal flute that belonged to James Madison, one of our founding fathers and the fourth president of the United States. This was an amazing moment, and yet you see a bunch of conservatives online who are poo-pooing this idea because, who is the, look at Lizzo in her, Spanx, wearing Spanx on the outside performance outfit and, gyrating her tush muscles and basically doing this little two-note performance. Like, hey, take what you can get. Don't forget, she's not in concert to do Brahms' concerto there. She's doing her own music. She's doing hip-hop, which is not exactly the same kind of music that appeals to people who would go to an opera or to a concerto concert. The two tastes don't necessarily overlap for most of the people who are there in attendance. So she gets to take this rare artifact of American history, whom nobody practically knew existed until now. I didn't know existed. I never knew there was such a thing. Moreover, I didn't know that James Madison was responsible for creating the Library of Congress. I know that now. And he owned this crystal flute and maybe a collection of other flutes and donated that to the Library of Congress. And now she, being this preeminent female black superstar who also knows how to appreciate a good flute, is getting to play this in front of thousands of people. And then she also did a little private performance within the Library of Congress for some of the people who were attending there. And I'm just like, this is an amazing moment. This is a Hamiltonian moment where you have somebody of African American descent who is fascinated by an artifact of one of the founding fathers of this country, who didn't look like her, who wasn't of the same gender of her, but at the same time, she feels comfortable enough to put herself in this person's shoes and connect with the founders of this country. We need more moments like that, and what we don't need are conservatives who look at these particular attempts by black Americans to connect with the history of America and say, oh, you did that while twerking, or, oh, you did this in the middle of a hip-hop concert, why are you giving it to the, even worse, why are you giving it to this fat person? It's like, like Pavarotti, if you'd handed him the flute, were you going to make weight jokes then? You have to take people where they're at, and when they express interest, you celebrate that interest. I remember a story, and it just occurred to me right now. I remember a story about a small Protestant church that decided to go Orthodox. And if you've ever been inside an Orthodox church, one of the things that you'll notice is that they have a lot of pictures. They will have a lot of pictures surrounding the walls. They'll have, a podium with a picture up front, and you usually see people kissing this thing. You see pictures of, Christ and the angels. You see pictures of various patron saints, and you will see all these pictures, and they're called icons. And this little, I don't know if it was a Baptist church or if it was, some other kind of Protestant church, they basically applied to join the Orthodox Church, and they had no icons. And the bishop who was supposed to celebrate the inclusion of that church, of that little Protestant church, into the Orthodox Church, was then going to bless the church, and they had no icons, they had no pictures to show. So they actually wound up getting a couple of almost postage stamp sized postcard type things, or postcard sized pictures that you would see inside an Orthodox church. They didn't have the money to get the actual icons or anything like that, or have those done by a professional iconographer, but they got these postcard icons. Now, the bishop could have come into this Protestant church and said, look at this little thing. Look at this, little postcard thing. I mean, you really want to call that an icon? I mean, that's barely, I could barely see that from here. I mean, you don't even have a frame on it or anything. I mean, the bishop absolutely could have come in and said something like that, but instead the bishop comes in and he looks and he says, oh, your church has icons. That's the kind of attitude that we need to have, that attitude of acceptance, that attitude of, you're celebrating the Founding Fathers. We love that. I don't care how you do it. We love that. All right? Those are the kinds of things, because one of the things that Jordan Peterson has said is that if you want to wreak hell in your circle, if you really want to turn the world a little more into hell, then whenever you see somebody do something positive, something that you would actually approve of, if you weren't harboring some other kind of resentment for God knows what reason why, if you were to see someone do something that you think was worthy of approval and then be negative toward that, you just watch, because they won't do it again. They will not offer themselves up to you again the way that they were willing to before. And when I see black Americans who are willing to say, hey, there's things about American history that I love, I will take whatever I can get, because I know that there are black Americans out there who will not have anything to do with American history. They will not even have anything to do with the present-day American system because of what they feel towards American history, because they feel like they can't participate. I remember I was watching a video by Stefan Molyneux. He was talking to the mayor of Skid Row. I think it's Sunset in the Golden State Part 2, his documentary, which you could probably still find at freedomain.com. And if you watch that interview, he interviews the guy who is in contact with the homeless in San Francisco, Los Angeles, whatever city it was that Stefan Molyneux was doing interviews in. And the guy was called the mayor of Skid Row because he knew how the homeless felt. And he said that there were black people in that homeless community who said, I don't want to be part of a system that hundreds of years ago enslaved people who looked like me. You know, you have people who harbor that much animosity toward the American system because of its history, because of what it did to people they don't even know, but who they know looked like them, that they're actually willing to be homeless and out on the street instead of participate in the system and get a job and make something of themselves. You know, they won't make something of themselves if what they make of themselves contributes to America. And now here, instead, you have somebody who is at the top, who is at the very top of her game, who is saying, I love this country, and I love this country's history, and I want to be and feel and see a part of this country's history. I want to hold this country's history in my very hands. I want to play the songs of this country on the flutes, the instruments that were owned by the people who made this country. When you see that, seize upon it. Don't shame it. For God's sakes, this is what you want. This is what you want, not just from black Americans, but from all Americans of every stripe, to say, yes, I love the history of this country. I want to be connected to the history of this country. When you see that, don't discourage it. Applaud it, even if it's imperfect, even if the expression is something not entirely to your liking. Because come on, what is? You know, nobody's perfect. Allow people their imperfect contributions. And then encourage them to come and contribute more and join your cause. That's how you'll win. That's how you win their hearts. That's how you penetrate into the communities that you couldn't penetrate into before. That's what you do. You don't look down your nose at people who are trying. You say, good try. I appreciate that. Thank you. And is there any way that I can help you do even more? That's the attitude you take. If you really want America to be one nation under God. You know, there was an MSNBC contributor who was basically talking about the fact that here you had this black woman who was a major superstar playing this flute that was owned by a former president of the United States, a writer of the Constitution, a writer of the 3/5 Compromise of the Constitution, and a former slave owner himself. What symbolism? And I know there's some portion of that was kind of like, kind of kicking it in the teeth of the white guy there. And I know that's what some conservatives are reacting to. But Really, when you think about it, and especially when you take into account the fact that this is a performer who understands the flute and how to play it and can appreciate it. What symbolism indeed? What symbolism indeed? Because here you have this woman who's willing to step into the shoes of a person who years ago might have owned someone who looked like her, and was willing to play a song, and was willing to play one of the great unifiers that mankind has, music. Don't pass up moments like this. Don't pass up moments like this because they're not perfect, because they don't touch on every aspect of your personal pride. Just appreciate, here is someone reaching out, and make sure that your hands are reached out to receive that grasp. That's how we'll win going forward. I'm Mike Bartica. Thank you for listening. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.